Welcome back. On our last episode, we heard from Allison Osterberg on how the Nisqually Watershed Planning Group was successful in getting our plan approved. Today, I'll be spending time with David Trout, the Natural Resources Director for the Nisqually Indian Tribe, and Kevin Hansen, the county's hydrologist, to talk more in depth about the Nisqually Watershed Plan. Okay. So we're here with Kevin Hansen discussing the Nisqually River Watershed Plan. This plan was developed in response to the state's Stream Flow Restoration Act, right?
Yes.
Can you explain how that came to be?
Okay, so over the last few decades, people have been drilling thousands of wells, very small wells for home use, and they're referred to as permit-exempt wells. And even though an individual well doesn't pull out much water, cumulatively, all of those wells, and there are about 20,000 of them in our county alone, they withdraw enough water that it became a problem. So the state Supreme Court stepped in 2016, said in the Hearst decision, we must repair the situation. The counties must figure out what to do. The governor and the legislature stepped in 2018, in January, and said, okay, we're going to pass the Stream Flow Restoration Act. It became part of Washington state law, and ever since then, our county and others have been developing watershed plans to repair the aquifer to the extent that each of those many, many wells pull water out of the system. So what we're trying to do is find ways to repair the aquifer that will allow those permit-exempt wells to continue to be drilled. And they're a crucial part of people's plans for home ownership in our county.
Now, repair the aquifer also is called mitigation.
That's right. That's right.
Can you give folks a couple of examples specific of how we repair the aquifer or perform that mitigation?
Absolutely, absolutely. So in our plan, we talked about several different ways. One of them that's very, very popular and I think is very exciting is to regrow our old forests. Old forests hold down water and they really keep the streams flowing well. So if you have an old forest, you can still harvest trees, but you can also bring in more fish and repair stream flow at the same time. Another way is to repair our streams themselves. So stream restoration that involves revegetating, remeandering, cutting off old ditches, and allowing the floodplains to reform as they naturally were. This lets water come back into the system, and it also feeds all year long the late season stream flow that we need. A third way, and this is really a credit to the city of Yelm, is to take reclaimed water from wastewater, purify it very highly, and reuse that water in the aquifer. So that's a very powerful direct remedy for the water we use.
Great. And for the citizens of Thurston County that may be relying on well water or maybe having plans to build a home in the future, what does this adoption of this plan mean to them?
Really, it means that they can go ahead with their plans as long as they're approved by the county in all the other ways they normally would. They can get a permit-exempt well if there, of course, is water available. So what we have to do is take into account each of these wells drilled for a new home and then mitigate for it by adding water back into the system so that streams are fed throughout the year and folks can continue to develop in the rural areas of our county.
Now, I understand you have a demonstration of how you can show that our aquifers are directly connected to our streams.
Oh yeah, this is an amazing demonstration that was shown to me by a woman from the League of Women Voters. You got to see this. It's cool. Let's go look.
Let's see it.
We'll go down here, and we are at the amazing, beautiful Billy Frank Jr. Nisqually National Wildlife Refuge to do this. So see all this water out here? Where did it come from? Well, it happens to be raining, so you get that part. But watch, in the wintertime, all of that rain comes down. It comes down from the sky and is very, very cold. And all of that cold, cold rainfall hits the ground, and then it begins to seep slowly toward our creeks. And then it reaches the creeks in August or September and flows out down the creeks. And that's why, even in the middle of the hot, hot summer, we have that icy cold, crystal clear water because it flowed through the earth. That earth filter is just amazing, and it's why we have some of the most special water ever. That's why Clint Eastwood brags about Olympia water. It's incredible. So let's watch and see what happens, because remember, by the end of the summer, the aquifers that we depend on for our groundwater have started to run dry. So look at this. An aquifer. I have an aquifer right here. It's amazing. Now, let's look at this. I other things like rainfall, lots and lots of cold rainfall. So what happens is, I've got a creek bed, little colander right here, and if I pour it into my aquifer, oh, look, there's no water in the creek. What happened? It went right in. It went right in from rain into the aquifer, but it never wet the creek. Oh, more rain, still raining, still raining. There's no water in the creek. Oh no! Keep raining, keep raining. Now it's March. Now it's April. Now it's May. Oh, look, my creeks are wet. They're beginning to flow. They're beginning to flow. Oh, look, now I have water in my creeks. It's a miracle. And it will keep flowing like that, so nice and cold, except if I drill a well. Bzzz. So here comes the well, and the well goes into the aquifer, and look what happens. We drink it. We take baths, and here, oh, that water's so good. I love our water. Uh-oh, there's not so much water in the creek anymore, but I'm still thirsty. I drink all year long. Oh no, the creek's dry. I'm really sorry, but there's no more water in the creek, because that's what happens. Wells, lots and lots and lots of wells get drilled, and each little one takes a little bit of water out of the creek because it's draining the aquifer that feeds the creek. And that's how groundwater is so important. So we need that rainfall, all of it from the wintertime to last all summer long. So look, the fish, they have a place to swim and they have a place to make babies. That's the beautiful thing about it. So storing that rain in the aquifer is the crucial thing. So how do we keep it back in? If all of a sudden I'm drinking it, what if I didn't have enough rain? Oh no, that would be very bad. So let's actually say that people decided to put water back into the aquifer. We pour it in by building the kinds of things, growing the kinds of forests that people need to keep the streams flowing. Because remember, a forest is a beautiful, beautiful way to actually keep water in a stream. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding water to keep the aquifers full. And that's what we just did. Our county, led by the Nisqually tribe, came up with a plan to help take all of the wells and compensate for the water they took out. So every time they drink, we're going to add some more water back in. Oh, now the creek is flowing again. That's the power of working together on this kind of plan. So David Trout is here today, and Dave is going to talk about how it was that people from all over the region near the Nisqually River came up with the plan to refill the aquifer, at least a little bit. It needs a lot, but we're going to give it a little bit for sure, and maybe more later. Okay? So go see David Trout. You're going to see him in a moment, and I think you'll learn something important.
Thanks, David, for being here, joining us on Thurston County Connections. And talk about the Nisqually Watershed Plan.
Yep, well, thank you, Commissioner.
So, what is the plan? Why do we need it? What's it all about?
So I think to really understand the story, you got to go back a little bit in time. And so, welcome to the Nisqually Watershed. You're standing here at the center of our universe. And in 1974, when Judge Bolt ruled in favor of the tribes and recognized their treaty rights, it started a ball moving forward in terms of management and involvement by the tribe in these processes. And Billy Frank, who this refuge is named after, decided early on that what we needed to do is work on fixing the home for the fish, work on the watershed, and do it in a collaborative way. So rolling things forward in 1987 with then County Commissioner Karen Frazier and others, they formed the Nisqually River Council, and we've been in place now since 1987. It's the oldest watershed council west of the Mississippi. And over those 30 plus years, we've developed amazing relationships and trust and the ability to work together on difficult issues. So the issue that we're talking about today is around water, and water for people and water for fish. And it was relatively easy for this group of people who've been working together for 30 years to take on what is probably the most contentious issue in the West, and certainly in Western Washington. And so through the efforts of all of our agencies and the tribe, we're able to sit down and deal with a very difficult issue. And it goes back to Billy Frank and Karen Fraser starting us down this path years ago.
Tell us about the partners that were involved and what the planning process was like and how long it took.
So the partners were all the folks in the watershed that use or touch water. So from the cities and the counties and the tribe, and citizen representatives as well from the Nisqually River Council. We would have loved to have had more time to do our work, but the legislature gave us a very short time frame to get the Nisqually Watershed Plan done. In dealing with the bigger Hearst groundwater connected to stream issue, the legislature picked two watersheds to go first as their first starters, the Nooksack and the Nisqually, and gave us about 9 months to complete our job. And so we got started as soon as we can, but it really didn't get started in earnest until June or so. So we had about 6 months to get a lot of work done. And because we worked so well together, we didn't have to go through the beginning process of developing trust and setting aside issues and positions. We'd done that years ago. And we just rolled up our sleeves with the county and the tribe and just simply got the work done.
So it sprang out of the relationships that were formed from the Nisqually River Council.
Very much so, yeah.
And so at a fundamental level, what is the plan trying to accomplish?
Well, so the plan is an addendum to a previous plan that we adopted back in the mid-2000s, and it really is a balance of dealing with fish for people, or water for people, and water for fish, and recognizing the tension and the need in both directions. So finding that place where we can meet the needs of our growing community within the Nisqually watershed and yet support the resources that are important to the tribe and to others in the state of Washington. So the addendum really focused on the impacts of growth in our watershed using water that's not connected to big systems. So individual wells going into the aquifer and the connection of those aquifers to the streams. So the work was really to better understand what's the growth going to look like in the Nisqually watershed, what's that impact going to be, and then proposing mitigations to deal with those projected impacts.
And what would you say are some notable or innovative features in terms of that mitigation strategies that the plan employed?
Right, there's a number of them. And first, I think it's important to understand that the work that we did, and mainly led by Thurston County, your staff, Kevin Hansen and Allison, helping us identify what the growth is going to be in the county and what the impacts are going to be. And when you get down to the nuts and bolts and you do that work, you see that the impact is fairly small. And we're projecting, if you turn it into a flow, about 1 cubic foot per second of impact will be removed out of the Nisqually watershed through the use of exempt wells. So 455 gallons a minute, it's a basketball moving downstream at a certain rate. It's not a lot of water. So right now the Nisqually River is flowing at about 1,000 CFS. So we're talking about a very small percent of what is really in the Nisqually watershed. But it's an important thing to mitigate. So the impact is fairly small. And so we developed two specific strategies to deal with that. One is a series of strategies we call micro mitigation, or things that are directed at mitigating those small impacts where they occur. So in Yelm Creek or in Muck Creek or in the Michelle River, where we project those impacts, we're proposing solutions to resolve those particular issues. And there's some innovative things that the county has helped us think about and ecologists helped us think about. One example is within Yelm's UGA, moving all of their groundwater to city sources and then redeveloping that city source to go into a deeper aquifer so it's no longer connected to Yelm Creek or the Nisqually River. If we do that, that'll save a lot of water for fish and allow for growth to continue in Yelm in a reasonable way. So we've got a number of these smaller mitigations in each one of the subbasins. But the really big, bold ideas that we're advocating, and I think the biggest and boldest, is to change the way we manage forest lands in the Nisqually. The Michelle River is our most important tributary of the Nisqually. It supports 2 ESA-listed threatened stocks, one steelhead, one Chinook, and they're both threatened by low summer flows. So we need to take action there to improve summer flows. And I mentioned the impact was about 1 cubic foot per second, 1 CFS. The Michelle during the summer sometimes will flow down to 5 CFS, or 5 cubic feet per second. And that's just not enough to sustain fish. And in fact, in August, the Michelle River does not connect to the Nisqually River. It goes dry before it gets to the river. So it's a forest-dominated system, and what we found through the work that we've done with the EPA is that the age of the trees matters to the water in the system. Young trees are like straws and pull water out of the system and shoot it into the air. And when they get to be 60 to 70 to 80 years old, they stop that, and suddenly water is retained in the system. So if we can change the way we manage timberlands in the Nisqually and go from the current market-driven 40-year rotation to more of an ecosystem-based 60 or 80-year rotation, we can change the summer flows in the Michelle from 5 CFS and not having it connected to 15 CFS and having flow all year round.
Wow.
So a big, big difference in the way we manage our timberlands will benefit fish and people.
Just by allowing more older trees to remain within the areas that are forested.
Exactly, and all the ecosystem values associated with that.
Has this been a technique that's been incorporated into other watershed plans, or is this something that's kind of a new idea?
This is a new idea, and it started here in the Nisqually. They've been looking at it into a Willamette in terms of the impact, but they really haven't developed any strategies to change the way they manage timberlands there yet. So what we're proposing in the Nisqually, and what the plan recommends as one of our highest priorities, is to create a community forest, a forest that's owned by the watershed community, the tribe, the county, its citizens, to manage for multiple benefits, for local jobs and the local economy to support that in our towns of Eatonville and Ashford and Elby, but also for water for fish and water for people. And we think we can get there in a way that makes a lot of sense. One of the interesting things about the way we currently are managing our timberlands in terms of ownership and harvest is that most of the benefit in terms of financial resources leave the watershed. They're owned by small investment companies and they're managed on Wall Street, so most of the profit generated by the management of our timberlands goes to Wall Street. In 2011, the biggest beneficiary of harvested timberlands in the Nisqually River was the Plumbers Union in Paris, France. So the money leaves, goes to Wall Street, investments take it, and it goes elsewhere. And in this case, it went to Europe. We want to buy those timberlands back, have them locally owned, have the money stay here, have the jobs stay here, have the water stay here, have the fish come back. And it's all part of this big comprehensive package. And it's a really innovative idea that was quickly embraced by the entire group. There was really no controversy around it, and folks realized the benefit and value of that. And we were really pleased and impressed with the way that moved forward.
We have a minute or two left. What are the next steps that will, now that you've got the plan adopted or approved by Department of Ecology, what happens next?
Right. I heard a long time ago the mayor of Washington, D.C. say something to the effect that plan without action is a daydream, and action without plan is a nightmare. And right now we're sitting with a plan, a really good plan, and the next step is action. How do we put this into action? The mitigation strategies on a small level will be taking place on individual jurisdictions. So the city of Yelm, the town of Eatonville, Thurston County will be implementing those smaller ones. But the big picture kind of things like the forest management we talked about is going to require investment. It's going to require funding from multiple sources, and we're looking for partners. There's some granting opportunities through this watershed planning process over the next 15 years. We're hopeful to access some of that and start acquiring those timberlands. We currently own about 1,500 acres. Our target's 30,000 acres. So we've got a long way to go, and it's going to take some resources and political will to get there. But with all of us working together, we're going to put this plan into action and make it a dream and a wonderful dream at that.
Thanks for your time, David.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you being a partner with us.
And you too.
This planning process involved a complex analysis of projecting new permit-exempt wells and estimating future water use. I am proud of the timely and creative work done by Thurston County staff in the Community Planning and Economic Development Department to complete this work, with special recognition for Director Josh Cummings, Senior Planner Allison Osterberg, and hydrologist Kevin Hansen. Without their hard work, this plan wouldn't have been possible. Thanks for tuning in to Thurston County Connection on Thurston Community Media. To learn more about the Nisqually Watershed Management Plan, visit the link below. For more programming like this, visit the county's YouTube channel or tune in to Comcast Channel 3.